Welcome to another Town Crier. Here we are at Albury Airport and we're in the Uiver Cafe and Bar. I love this place and I love the story that goes with it. It's the story of the Uiver from the great London to Melbourne air race in 1934, a true story of adventure and romance, and we'll be hearing about it in a minute's time. But first, let's hear about what you think on the street.
There's a massive financial literacy problem with our kids in schools. They're all learning how to add letters and numbers together and algebra and all those sort of things that you don't use in real life, but there's a massive shortfall in just street smart finances about, what is rent, what is board, what am I going to be faced with when I move out of mum and dad's house and into the real world.
I think it'd be a great thing. I think sort of for them to learn, about money and what, true cost of livings and all of those sorts of things. I mean, so often these days kids are a want now type, sort of things. So, I think to give them some of those real life experiences and that sort of would be a good thing.
Yeah. Did you have any training at school?
No, I believe it should be a core subject in the curriculum is learning how to budget. Particularly, I don't think there's probably enough focus on that.
Well, we're nearly 20 and I moved to Mildura. I moved to Mildura at the end of the year. So I'm pretty financial stable. I've also got another job over in Albury, so I'm pretty lucky to have the two and just keep saving and dream big.
Dream big?
Yeah.
Well, I still live at home, so my mum doesn't charge me rent, which I'm grateful for. She's always said that we can stay at home for free, and by the time we're 22, 23, if we have enough for a house deposit, move out, go buy a house, don't rent it, because renting is just throwing away your money. So she's happy to support me, and I've already got a decent car. It's going to get me going for hopefully 3 years. And then after that, I should have enough saved to go buy something really nice and have that for 10 years. I've seen my mum's car last for 15, so surely I'll be able to afford something in the next couple of years that will last for quite a few more to come. So
Very easy to get the big plasma TV and very easy, we seem to be a buy now, pay later sort of society with the Easy Pay and Zip Pay and all these new lay-by facilities that have come onto the market.
Hi and welcome back to Town Crier. Albury Airport is our location today, and I'm with Peter Mole, Chairman of the Board of the Uiver Memorial Community Trust, who are doing the building of the memorial representation of the Uiver. Now the story here about the Uiver is an incredible one. That's spelt U-I-V-E-R. It's Dutch for stork. And in 1934, there was an incredible air race that took place between from London to Melbourne, commemorating 100 years of the founding of Melbourne. Is that correct, Peter?
That is correct, yes. And
I've got that bit right, anyway.
John, that was a huge air race which spiked the interest of people all over the world. And received a lot of entries, and it was a major event in 1934.
Now, the Uiver, which this is a representation of behind, and we'll get on to the amazing story behind this aircraft behind us in a moment, but the Uiver was an entrant from the KLM Royal Dutch Airlines.
That is correct, yes. It was and in fact that aircraft was entered as a commercial airliner, completely unmodified, flown by one of the Dutch crew on this particular race, and not only that, but it carried fare-paying passengers, mail and freight.
Yeah, so because its origin was, it was a mail plane that went on a run to Batavia, as Indonesia or Jakarta was known then, twice a week. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. Yeah. So the Dutch were flying regularly to Indonesia with this aircraft type.
Yeah, which was a Dutch colony still.
Yes, it was a Dutch colony at the time.
Yeah, so this is just a normal plane, in inverted commas, flying in this great air race. On board the crew, there's a German aviatrix, a woman who's actually a journalist.
Yes, yep, and was an aviatrix who came along for the ride.
Yep, and a Brazilian banker. and some German bankers, I think?
No, a Dutch banker.
A Dutch banker.
Yep.
And a crew. So they're all sitting there comfortably in the beautiful airliner. It also, this race was sponsored by McPherson McRobertson, is that correct?
That is correct. He was a local chocolatier and a very wealthy individual who sponsored the race with a huge prize for the winning entrant.
So you'll all remember McRobertson's chocolates, synonymous with chocolates, certainly as when I was growing up. Not that I'm that old. I mean, let's face it, we won't go into that. But anyway, so he puts up the money for the air race for the 100-year celebrations of Melbourne's founding. So the air race, it kicks off from a place called Milden Hall outside of London. What was that?
Well, Milden Hall was the airport there at the time, so it was the most convenient place for it to start, I suppose. And all the aircraft took off within a couple of minutes of one another.
What sort of other aircraft did you have in the race?
Well, Boeing also had an entrant, which was their latest aircraft, which was an all-metal aircraft, which was competing with the dc2 at the time. Other than that, there were a number of private entrants, basically rag and bag airplanes, and aircraft that were owned by individuals who entered the race just as single pilot operations.
I know KLM were hoping, they didn't have a direct dedicated route to Australia at that time.
That's correct,
So
yes.
they were hoping that they were proving that they could be, have I got this right, sort of good enough to run a flight from Europe to Australia regularly?
Yes, KLM had been trying to get access to Australian airspace for some time to initiate an airline connection between Europe and Australia, and that had been made relatively difficult because it was deemed that the English national airline, BOAC, should have been the airline that came in first, but KLM was able to circumvent that particular issue by entering in the race.
I love that that sort of rivalry. You know, it's like Bathurst with Holden and Ford, only in the air. I know I'm drawing a long bow with that, but just wanted to bring that in. Okay, I love that sort of stuff. Now, the plane stopped for refuelling, obviously, in the Middle East and Aleppo. Did they stop at Aleppo? Where did they stop?
Yeah, I'm not sure of all the places that they stopped in because primarily my focus has been on the events in Albury.
Yeah.
But they stopped in a number of different places. What I do know is that the aircraft did not fly the conceived race route. It actually flew a longer route, which made stops at their regular refueling stops that they had established over some time between Holland and Indonesia.
Yeah.
And so they actually flew a longer race, and even during after one departure, a passenger had been late and they turned back. Unheard of in today's airline industry. They turned back to pick up that passenger.
Wow.
And of course, well, we know the result at the end of the race.
And I remember reading that tragically a number of other entrants crashed en route.
Yes,
so
it
wasn't an easy drive this at all.
No, aviation was still very, very much in its infancy. People that were involved in aviation were definitely deemed to be adventurous.
Yes.
And I wouldn't say gung-ho as such, but you certainly had
but there was that kind of, one of the things that appeals to me about the Uiver story is that, it's got that era of a bygone age of romance and adventure and, a sense of the unknown.
Yes, absolutely. It was very much still in its discovery stages, and there were a lot of unknowns in those days in regards to the conditions that you were going to be flying through, the conditions at your destination, things that we in today's aviation industry are very clearly aware of before we even depart our airport that we're leaving from.
Okay, Peter, let's cut to the later stages of the race now. And the Uiver is in Australia. It's coming second. And it's up at Charleville one night refuelling.
Yep.
It's running second to, I can't remember the...
Comet.
The Comet.
The Comet, yep, which is a de Havilland aircraft.
De Havilland. So it's coming first.
Yes.
The Uiver, the McDonnell Douglas dc2.
Yes.
Is coming second, the Royal Dutch Airlines entrant, and they're refuelling at Charleville. What happens after that?
Well, on the last leg of the run, which was supposed to be from Charleville direct through to Melbourne, we experienced at that time of year quite a few thunderstorms and things. And on that particular night, there were some particularly severe thunderstorms around the place. And the very rudimentary navigation systems that these aircraft used at the time were very susceptible to lightning discharges. And they used an instrument called an ADF, an aerial direction finding system, which relied on radio signals from a transmitter, and they were mostly commercial radio stations that they could tune up and beam into, and then the needle on the dial would point directly to that station or the transmitter. But with lightning discharges, the needle went haywire and pointed everywhere. And so the aircraft became disorientated. It lost its way and around Albury. And so it's flying at night through rain and miserable weather, low cloud, obviously, in and around thunderstorms. And the people of Albury recognised that there was an aircraft in distress and decided to do something about it.
Now, one of the air traffic controllers picks up the fact that they are upriver, somewhere near Cancoban.
Yeah.
That's my kind of reading of it anyway. And if you've ever been stuck in Cancoban at night, you'll know that you've got to get out of there. And anyway, so they say fly towards Albury. I don't know how on earth they would have known to have been able to see the Murray River.
Well, it would have been dark. They wouldn't have been able to see anything. Today, in 2019, there are lots of towns around the place. There's lots of artificial light, and being a pilot myself and having flown at night, it is in the area around the river and so on quite easy to distinguish the various places along the river. Places would have been a lot smaller in those days and have a lot less light. So, in essence, it would have been very dark, and the airplane would have just been searching for some recognizable landmark that they could identify their position with and proceed from there. Of course, what the people of Albury did at the time was use the city lights to flash in Morse the words Albury so that the crew could identify the lights of Albury, which was a lot smaller at the time, and so would have been a lot less light than there is today, would have been able to identify where they were.
Isn't that amazing? So the lights of Albury are going spelling out Albury, and the plane sees that. The crew on the plane sees
I
that.
understand that the plane may have not seen the full message of Morse, but they did see the flashing lights and headed for the township.
The history I got was that they got the Morse code wrong, and they were actually flashing Ablery. But that's, I don't know whether that's myth or legend or what, but they were flashing Abler, and they said, we better land at Ablery, even though that's not on the map. What a great story. That's the mayor and the Alf War and the town, I think, one of the town engineers are doing that. Now, also, they cut in on the ABC radio.
Yes.
Is this correct?
Yes, this is correct.
And they ask everyone to go out to the racecourse. There wasn't an airport then, is there?
There was no airport at Albury at the time. And apparently there was a cricket match being played in England, and a lot of people were up listening to that. So, and the ABC radio announcer cut in on the cricket transmission to ask people with vehicles to go out to the Albury racetrack to form a rudimentary runway lighting system for the airplane to land.
Isn't that brilliant? So everyone turned on their car lights out at the racecourse.
That's correct.
Formed a line.
Yes, and I've been amazed by that story, because how many cars would there have been in Albury in 1934?
Yeah, Yeah, yeah,
not,
yeah.
Not too many, I
Yeah,
don't think, but
I get
enough to do
T-model
the job.
Fords and Packards and I don't
yes.
know, a couple of other things. And people are listening to the cricket. Who would have been batting but Sir Donald Bradman, our version then of Steve Smith?
Yes, saving the day there.
What an extraordinary night. So the plane lands safely, incredibly. They take the crew to the Globe Hotel, I understand, in Dean Street.
Yes, I believe that's where they went for the evening.
There's a whopping great party.
Yes.
Even on whatever night of the week that was. And then they come out the next morning and the plane is bogged.
Well, the plane landed, obviously, and because of all the rain, the plane bogged on landing, which may have been fortuitous because if the ground hadn't been as wet as what it was, they probably would have overrun the landing area available and crashed into the grandstand.
Yes. Gone through that, gone on to Mate Street and ended up going through the window of the kebab shop. Yes.
So that was very fortuitous, and because it was bogged, fairly heavily bogged, and 300 to 400 people turned up the next morning to have a look at this airplane because the aircraft in 1934 was basically state of the art. I mean, it was just like a spaceship.
Wow.
And
wow.
Both for the size of it and the construction being all metal. So hundreds of people turned up the next day to have a look at the aircraft on the racecourse, and they were in fact asked then to help pull it out. And I was told a story the other day which I wasn't aware of, and that is that there was a busload of people that were being taken out to the Hume Dam because the Hume Dam was under construction as well.
Oh, wow.
And they corralled the workers that were on that bus to help to pull the aircraft out of the bog.
How amazing. I love that. So they put ropes on I've seen photos of ropes on the wings.
Ropes on the wheels, on the
On the
undercarriage.
wheels, sorry,
the
yes.
undercarriage, yes.
So they're pulling it out like this, da 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 da, Volga boatman, da 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 da, and they get. One thing that's fascinated me about the story is where did they get it to that was dry enough for the plane to take off?
Well, they found an area apparently that was where the ground was a little bit higher, and it was sufficiently dry for the aircraft to be supported properly. I do understand. I was given to understand that they had to pull down the greyhound race track that was on the centre of the race course in order to provide a sufficiently long takeoff distance for the aircraft to get airborne again. And so they had to pull down some other fencing to get the aircraft onto some dry ground. And I have seen some photos of the aircraft in the process of taking off with still running through puddles and splashing water everywhere. So it was very, very wet.
Peter, one thing that fascinates, and you're telling the story beautifully, I've got to say, one thing that fascinates me was it was a can-do period, a can-do era. You try and do that now, there'd be forms going around and emails and people wringing their hands saying, oh, we couldn't possibly do that, and oh, we've got to ring so-and-so and get permission for this, and, completely different era. That needs to happen? Okay, let's do it.
That's exactly right, and that's what I find so fascinating about this particular story, that it really was a can-do attitude from the local citizens. As you say, correctly so, there was a problem, it needed to be solved, this is what we're going to do about it, let's make it happen. Somebody once, talking about the same issue, said to me, look, in today's day and age, by the time they do impact studies and occupational health and safety and, are there any fluffy animals that are going to be hurt, the airplane will be up there for months. So
yeah, it's just a completely different era. Anyway, let's get on with the story. I love the fact that they fly down to and land at Laverton outside of Melbourne, which is their version then of Tullamarine. And they've still finished second.
Yes, second overall, and actually first on handicap, but second overall. Yeah.
Incredible. On their way back, they fly over Albury Racecourse, I should say, and they drop a cigarette tin, which is engraved. Do you remember the engraving?
No, I don't remember the engraving.
It's
but
something
I
like to the people of Albury.
Yes, as a thank you to the people of Albury for helping them on that night.
The cigarette case is still in the. It's
in the Library
Museum.
Museum. Yes, at this stage, together with a lot of other things.
It raises that. I love that because when I first heard that, and I still hear it, and it raises the hairs on the back of my neck, and it makes me a bit teary because it's such a beautiful sort of a little thing that finishes that story in such a beautiful and romantic fashion.
Yes, yeah, and of course when the airplane got back to Holland, to Schiphol, there were thousands of people there to welcome it, because it was such a major event that the aircraft had partaken in, and there was a lot of exchange of presents and gifts between the citizens of Holland and Albury here, and there's been a connection established, which I think even to this day, well, I know to this day still exists.
I think the King and Queen of the Netherlands bestowed the honour of Orange Nassau, which was a very, very high award for courage, bravery and services to the people of the Netherlands.
Yes,
is that correct?
yes.
On the people of Albury.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure on that, but they certainly did to some of the participants in the saving of the aircraft.
It's extraordinary and beautifully told, Peter. So we're going to actually go for a walk, we'll cut to this in a minute. We're going to go for a walk because Peter's going to tell us about the history of this aircraft behind us, which is it was actually a predecessor of the Uivers. Same make, same model, but slightly older. We're going to go for a walk and have a look at that with Peter Mole here at the Uiver Memorial Hangar here at Albury Airport. I'm here in this McDonnell Douglas DC2 here at Albury Airport in the Uiver Memorial Hangar here with Peter Mole, and Peter is going to take us through the history of this aircraft. Up the front, of course, we've got a Hungarian sniper who's going to take us out. That's Ziggy up there. This is exciting being in this. This is an actual DC2, Peter.
That's right. This aircraft was built by the Douglas company, and it's actually an aircraft that is slightly older than the original Uiver, and we've been able to acquire it, and we're rebadging it as the Uiver in memory of the events of 1934.
If you were a visitor to Albury from 1984 onwards, you would have seen this plane in the car park. It was sort of on a stand. It looked like a model aeroplane flying over the car park, wasn't it?
That's right. It was a fuselage that was, or an aircraft that was reassembled by a Rotary Club in Albury as part of the 50th anniversary of the landing of the Uiver on the Albury Racecourse in 1934.
Yep, and this plane was actually found by enthusiasts up in Bankstown.
That's right. This aircraft has quite a colourful history of its own. This aircraft was actually came out of the factory and was supplied to Eastern Airlines, where the aircraft was put to work as a commercial airliner for passenger carrying purposes. In 1941-42, it was bought by the Australian government. It had a big conversion done, a large cargo door put in the side, and the aircraft was then given to the Australian Air Force and used to cart equipment to the war that wasn't happening in Darwin, to provide some heavy machinery and engines and that sort of stuff to the war effort in the Northern Territory.
And I find this incredible. While that secret war was going up in the top and the Japanese were attacking Darwin and places in northern regions, this plane was flying up from Sale, did you say, in Victoria, and taking up aircraft car parks and all that?
Yes, that's correct. It was basically, it and about 2 or 3 of its sister ships were continually being used to shuttle supplies and equipment up there. And we, in fact, we were given the logbook of one of the pilots who has notations that mentioned this very aircraft, where he would spend 5, 6, 7 hours a day in this airplane just ferrying things between the Northern Territory and the southern states to get supplies up there into that area.
It's incredible because you'd wonder how much they could. Like, this is a tiny space, and you're talking about aircraft engines coming in through this doorway here and being placed here, and other supplies being taken up north. That's extraordinary.
Yes, it is, and that's why the airplanes, I suppose, flew so much. But times were desperate, and they needed things up there, and quickly.
Okay. How are you, let's switch forward to now 2019. How are you going about, what sort of a team have you assembled or are you part of in the construction? Because I noted that there was a lot of, the plane had broken down a lot.
Yeah, after the war, 1946, the airplane suffered a heavy landing in Adelaide. It was bought then by Butler Aviation, who were operating a number of DC2s on commercial airline runs. They bought it as spares, dismantled it, and brought it to Sydney, where it basically was left because it was never restored or repaired. It was then bought by the Rotary Club of Albury West and used as the commemorative aircraft. The interesting thing about this particular aircraft now is that it is actually the oldest surviving example of a DC-2 left in the world. There are only 8 left out of about 200 that were built. And this is the oldest one. So on a number of levels, this is an icon that is worth preserving, because this is the aircraft that ultimately formed the basis of the DC-3, and I think everyone knows what a DC-3 looks like and what they have contributed to not just the efforts in World War II, but even continue to contribute to aviation today, when there are quite a number of DC-3s still airworthy and flying.
Absolutely, absolutely. How are you going about, how do you get spare parts? How do you, because a lot of, you were saying that a lot of the fuselage is corroded.
Yes, spare parts are a real challenge for us, given that there are that the aircraft are no longer being manufactured and there are only 8 left. There are no spare parts available. Any parts that we need, we have to make ourselves. And the years of in essence neglect that the aircraft has suffered have caused some significant corrosion in some critical areas, and so we're having to make all the parts that we need ourselves in order to restore this aircraft, which we're not doing to a flight status. We're only restoring it to a static display status, but we are wanting to do it to as high a standard as possible, and to retain wherever we can aviation standards, processes and techniques in the process of preserving this airframe.
That's mind-boggling. That is absolutely mind-boggling. Have you got a blueprint or something that you could go off? Because my only knowledge of fixing airplanes is my airfix days as a kid. With a little airfix Spitfire kit, and you just put this bit and this bit, and then paint it. It'll look fabulous.
Well, it's to some degree this is very similar, only on a somewhat larger scale. But look, you ask about blueprints, and as a matter of fact, the Douglas company, of course, no longer exists. It was bought by Boeing, as most things seem to be. Boeing buys everything. But we approached Boeing, and initially they were reluctant to help us because they thought we were going to bring this airplane back to a flying status, and they didn't want the responsibility of that. When we were able to persuade them that it was for static display purposes only, they were more than helpful, and they have actually supplied us with all the blueprints for the aircraft that they still had available. At their cost, which was wonderful. So we actually do have quite a significant number of original or reproductions of the original drawings of this aircraft that we are using to restore this airplane. It's
an incredible story. It's exciting. I'm with Peter Mole with the DC2 Uiver Memorial construction here in Albury. We'll be back in just a few moments' time. We'll be talking about the anniversary dinner happening in Albury on October 19th. Peter, the 85th anniversary of the Uiver landing at Albury. The dinner coming up on October 19th promises to be a grand old affair.
Yes, it is. We're very much looking forward to it. We've got some fairly VIP dignitaries coming in the form of the Dutch ambassador, who is a co-patron for the Trust. Also Captain Richard de Crepney, the Qantas pilot, who was the pilot in command of the A380 that had the major engine failure out over Singapore some years ago. Also a co-patron for the Trust. is coming to the dinner as well. And we've also asked KLM to be involved, and they're sending a number of representatives, given that this year is KLM's 100th anniversary. So we hope to have quite a turnout for that.
That's going to be a great night. That's at the... I'm emceeing that night, and I'm really looking forward to it. That's going to be at the Commercial Club Albury on Saturday, October 19th. A dinner and speakers, and tickets available from...
Tickets available on Ticketek, just via your laptop, your computers.
Brilliant. It's a fundraiser actually for the ongoing project that is the Uiver, the ghost of the real Uiver goes over here. Tell us, what's the vision going forward, Peter?
Well, the first thing, of course, that we want to do is restore this aircraft. It's not to flying condition; it's to static display condition only. Restoring it to flying condition is just way too expensive.
Yeah.
And then we want to, the Trust wants to move forward with a museum to get the aircraft undercover so that it's not sitting outside on poles and deteriorating again, and to put the aircraft in a bigger facility where the museum concept can be developed while the restoration is going on.
That's brilliant. So, ostensibly people could come in and see the construction of the aircraft going forward.
That's the concept that we're looking for, and the extent of the restoration work that's being done, and also while the aircraft is in pieces and slowly being assembled, just what it takes to build an aircraft.
A living air museum.
That's the concept. Yes.
It's great. Peter Mole, thanks so much for giving your time to be on Town Crier, and it's such an amazing story. It's a lovely story. It's a brilliant romantic story about Australia and about aviation per se, and it just comes from an era which is just, there was that sort of spirit of adventure and ad hoc can-do nature.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to tell this story, which I'm very passionate about.
Great, Peter. Great. Good luck with the project, and we'll see you on October 19th at the anniversary dinner.
Terrific. Thanks very much, John.
You've been with Town Crier. Oh, I've got a gift for you. Sorry, we've got the gift. John Kovacs, our wonderful director and producer, the bag is always shoddy that the gift is in, but the gift is always gold, and it's, you guessed it, lemonades. They're a beautiful fruit and so tasty, and they're actually called a lemonade. So we've got a bag of those for you.
Thank you.
And also, Pete and Ziggy on camera 2 went out to the racecourse, and they found overnight a packet of Uiver original rivets. They spelled it different in those days, the word rivet. But there you are, look at the original Uiver rivets, from out at the racecourse at Albury. They're a real collector's item, let me tell you. Peter Mole, thanks for being with us on Town Crier.